and warmer across north and western areas.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays up in Staffordshire continue heading north along the M6. Now the exit slip road is closed at junction 12, which means you can't get off the motorway onto the A5, the Gady turn-off at the scene of an accident. The two inside lanes also closed off where recovery work's taking place. And further south on the M6, heading south through Warwickshire, between the Corley services and junction 3, the Coventry turn-off, a lorry and a car have collided in the inside lane, so it remains shut for recovery work. The M4 in Berkshire is partly blocked eastbound just after junction 10, the Wokingham and Bracknell exit, where a car's broken down. Also in Reading, just west of the town centre, the Oxford Road is closed. A car's on fire off Connaught Road. On the M20 in Kent, there are coastbound queues after a car broke down on the M26. And the M26 itself is slow. And delays continue on trains out of Liverpool Street to Cheshunt because of problems to signals at Clapton. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dewbs & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. A simple question for you tonight. Are you proud to be British? Because according to a new survey, there's been a massive drop in Brits who are. I've got to say, quite frankly, it paints quite a bleak picture when it comes to our satisfaction levels in areas such as immigration, NHS and trust in the government. Your thoughts on that? Also, a rise of populism is said to be sweeping across the EU and it's been suggested that this could soon affect Keir Starmer and politics here. Could it? Also, do you reckon that council tax now could be the potential latest victim of Labour's economic hit list? Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has refused to rule out scrapping an exemption for people living alone. Goodness me, do you support that or not? And get this, a group of children, some as young as 12 and primarily girls, have been arrested for allegedly murdering an 80-year-old. I've got to ask a simple question. What is going on when it comes to children? Are they becoming more violent? If so, what do you think is behind it? And crucially, what do we do about it? All of that and more, but first, the 6 o'clock news headlines.
Thanks, Michelle. Your top stories this evening. French prosecutors have opened an investigation into the deaths of 12 migrants in the English Channel. The French Interior Minister has confirmed the deaths after a boat with dozens of migrants capsized in the English Channel. It's believed 10 of the 12 are women, with most of them migrants from Eritrea. Gerald Darmanin added that the Coast Guard rescued more than 50 people during its search and rescue operation. Border and Security Minister Angela Eagles said that the gangs facilitating the crossings must be stopped.
These dangerous boat crossings are being facilitated for financial reward by smuggling gangs who don't care about the safety of the people that they are cramming onto boats, often over-cramming onto boats and causing these dangerous crossings, and it's that we've got to stop happening in the future.
The Scottish Government is to make £500 million in cuts, according to its Finance Secretary. Shona Robison told MSPs Scotland cannot ignore the severe financial challenges it faces in announcing the £500 million worth of savings. She claimed the UK has entered a new era of austerity under the Labour government. Here's Shona Robison speaking in Holyrood.
Today, a range of measures to support the 2024-25 budget totalling almost £1 billion, of which up to £500 million are direct savings. The savings include up to £60 million of further savings that will be realised through the implementation of the emergency spend controls, particularly targeting recruitment, overtime, travel and marketing.
At least 41 people have died in a missile strike in Ukraine, the deadliest this year. More than 180 people were wounded on Tuesday when Russia hit a military institute in the central town of Poltava. That's according to President Volodymyr Zelensky. He said in a video that Putin's forces struck with two ballistic missiles, damaging a military building. There's been backlash over the decision by the government to suspend some arms sales to Israel, including from former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who's accused Keir Starmer of abandoning the ally. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the decision follows a review which found that there was clear risk that weapons could be used to commit a serious violation of international humanitarian law. Mr Lammy says around 30 of the 350 licences will be suspended, stressing it's not a blanket ban and it's not an arms embargo. However, former Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has told media this morning that the suspension was akin to student politics. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband says the government will always support Israel while holding it accountable.
We've always said, and we believe, that Israel has an absolute right to defend itself, but within international law. And the Foreign Secretary took advice, as he said he would, on whether there was a risk that British arms sales would be used in breach of international law. That's why he made the decision he did to ban the export of some arms to Israel.
To the Tory leadership race now, and Tom Tugendhat has thrown his hat into the ring. The Shadow Secretary Minister says he's been setting out his vision for the future of the party and the nation. Mr Tugendhat is one of 6 Tory MPs vying to be Rishi Sunak's successor. He says he will promise to reset the party's relationship with the public and to return to honesty in politics. 5 children have been arrested over the murder of an 80-year-old man in Leicestershire. He was walking his dog in Franklin Park when he was seriously assaulted by a group of young people on Sunday and died in hospital. A boy and a girl, both aged 14, and one more boy, plus 2 girls aged 12, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Police are appealing for witnesses to come forward due to prior contact with the police. The force between the force and the police, the force and the victim, the police will be making a referral to the Independent Office of Police Conduct. The inquest of Steve Diamond, now a guest on the Jeremy Kyle Show, has heard that the 63-year-old died of an overdose of morphine and a heart problem. He's suspected to have taken his own life 7 days after filming for the ITV programme in 2019. He'd taken a lie detector test for the show after being accused of cheating on his ex-fiancée. Steve's son, Carl Woolley, says his father had continued to be very upset in the following days and would call him up to 6 times every day. Those are your latest news headlines at 6 minutes past 6. I'm Will Hollis with more in 1 hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Will. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel, Matt Goodwin, the pollster and academic. Also, Judita De Silva, the broadcaster. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. As are each and every one of you at home, you can get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me. Don't forget, as well, in case you might not be aware of this, we're also on your radio. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I've got a conundrum, I want to watch the debate, but I want to go out, you can do both. Take me with you in your car. What a treat for your ears. But look, I'm asking you tonight, do you feel proud to be British? Lee, you're not messing around. You've been in touch with me already. One of my viewers say, Michelle, the question is, what does being British actually mean anymore? That is indeed a good question. Why I'm asking this question, by the way, is because a survey has come out which basically shows that pride in Britain seems to have fallen sharply in the past decade. But apparently we are a lot more inclusive nowadays in our attitudes. This is a social attitude survey, in case you are wondering. I can bring a graph up, actually, because it does show that Brits, when you look at this as decades have gone by, it shows that Brits are apparently discontent with areas such as politics and immigration, but apparently we're still proud to some extent of our achievements in sport and art. So what do you make to all of this, Matt Goodwin?
Yeah, so I think when we think about our identity and our history, you have what researchers call a civic conception, which is about our achievements, the rules, the institutions. And then you have what we often call an ethnic, traditional conception of our identity, which is about our ancestry, our roots, where are we from. And what the survey is showing is that basically over time, Britain is becoming a more civic nationalist society. So people are less focused on their shared history, ancestry and so on. Now, of course, the million-dollar question here, Michelle, is, well, why is that trend happening? Now, if you lean to the right and you're a conservative, you'd probably say, well, this is happening because we are now spending every day denigrating our history. We're encouraging and teaching children to basically hate their history. If you're on the left, you'd probably say, well, actually, this is a reflection of how diverse our society is becoming. We have more people from minority backgrounds. We have more university graduates who tend to be more liberal. And so over time, that's pushing us in a more civic direction. But what's clear is, you know, this isn't going away anytime soon, these different conceptions of who we are.
I want to ask you at home that question I started with. Are you proud to be British? And what does that even mean to you? Anyway, get in touch and tell me. But Judita, your thoughts?
I think the point that your guest made is really bang on when he goes, what does it mean to be British? And different people define it different ways, because what you will find is younger generations will look towards achievement and what collectively makes us unified, and what has made you feel exceptional, do something with the badge of coming where you're from on your chest. But as opposed to history, because I think it's is inevitably going to happen when you have a shift in generations. Younger generations view nationalism differently to older generations. So when you take a litmus test like this now, you would have a shift in sentiment, because younger people see being British a different way, because they have a global perception of what it is to operate as a community.
Just briefly, there is something I want to pick up on, though, because let's say, you know, London liberals will say Britain is now being redefined as a diverse, multicultural, pro-immigration nation. I'm influenced by some of the writing on identity, which says, well, to say that a nation is welcoming of diversity is fine. It might be true. To say that a nation is defined by its embrace of multiculturalism, it's fine. It might be true. But to say that the only thing that defines a nation is its embrace of diversity is like saying that nation doesn't have an identity of its own. And there are lots of people...
But do we?
Well, there are lots of people who will say, we have a very distinct, unique and proud history as England or Britain or London or Hull or whatever, and we want to celebrate that distinctive identity. Liberals are now saying, well, actually, what we want to do is repackage your identity around universal themes like diversity, which, to be honest, don't really have anything distinctive about them at all. Like, every nation could be welcoming of diversity. It doesn't actually tell us anything about their distinctive identity. Lots of Brits watching this show will be saying, well, actually, there is something really special about being British or being English. And it's not a race thing. It's simply saying we have a unique and proud history and we should celebrate that.
Should we celebrate our history like that?
Definitely. When you look at history, what you find pride in, you find pride, because I don't think it's literally limited to we are measuring it by diversity or multiculturalism. When you look at all the different, like the different niveau that they actually tested, they said there had been dips in some, and there have been elevations in others. And I think that comes from, like, even when you've asked people, young people say, I'm proud of Britain because, and what happens to be their barometer of measurement is different from an older person saying, I am proud of Britain because. So this survey isn't saying that there are a bunch of people who are not proud of Britain. They're saying they are proud of Britain for different reasons, and that's reflected generationally.
I'll just tell you a couple of other points that came out of this that I thought were interesting. You might agree. In 2013, 86% of people apparently said they were proud of Britain's history. That figure is on the decline. As I said, it's fallen to just 64%. Just 49% of people apparently said that they'd rather be a citizen of Britain than anywhere else. That figure was 62% in 2013. Only 53% of people say that they take pride in the way our democracy works. Again, that's down. It was 69% in 2013. I found this interesting. The proportion of people who think that to be, quote, truly British, it is important for someone to have been born in Britain. That's fallen. It was 74%. It's now 55%. Again, the proportion of people who think it's important for someone to have British ancestry has dropped from 51% to 39%, but 86% are keeping up with these stats. I hope so. I'll test you at the end. 86% of people say it's important that somebody respects British political institutions and laws.
Just quickly on that, I've just finished a great book, and he'll like me plugging it. Frank Furedi, who's a professor, and he's written this great book.
He's been on this show.
He's been on this show. And Frank has just written a great book called The War Against the Past, in which he says actually one of the challenges facing Western societies is not just about how our societies are changing and, you know, they're becoming, you know, more diverse, more complex. He argues that the real challenge here is actually about a political ideology that is invested in deconstructing, in repudiating our history and our past. And it's interesting that these survey results come out, Michelle, just a week after we also learned that children in British schools are being taught about things like white privilege, the idea of whiteness, the idea of white guilt, which comes from a theory called critical race theory, which essentially argues that Western nations are institutionally racist. Now, if children are being taught this stuff in the classroom, and then we're seeing survey findings that are saying, well, actually, on balance, they're less proud of their history than earlier generations, people like Frank would say, well, what this reflects is the ideological war that is now raging against Western societies.
Blimey, what do you think to that, Jadisa?
I disagree to some extent, because I think it's kind of, it does a disservice to people's individual thought and critical thinking of the individual, because you can provide someone with information, which you should always do. How they digest it, it's down to them. And there's also the added stimulus of what your life is like, what your family is like, what your culture is like. And an example I would give is this: I had a meeting, I went to Birmingham New Street Station. When I went out and just looked at the station, it's possibly the most eclectic collection of people I had ever seen, and it was brilliant. Like, you had a Chinese guy with a black girlfriend, a black guy with a white girlfriend, a Jewish girl with a Muslim boyfriend. I was just like, that's what the world looks like to younger generations. That's why I said the point of they have a globalized perspective of what community is. So when you have a world like that, your stimulus is, if everyone around me is multicultural, multi-ethnic, when I go to school and learn about histories that treated that demographic a certain way, I question it. I pursue accountability. I ask why that accountability never came. So this is coming organically from people feeling that my world is populated a certain way, and I want to live in it with recognition of everyone equally.
So the counter to that would be the way that we teach children in the West about their history only goes one way. So we teach, for example, British kids about Britain's empire, and some of the things we got right, mainly some of the things we got wrong in our history, as our educational system teaches it, because I would argue it's slightly lopsided. We don't really teach kids about slavery and imperialism that's still going on in non-Western parts of the world, in parts of Africa, for example, in China, for example. And I think many people sense that the ideological project that is rumbling through schools, museums, galleries, universities, really goes one way, and it is, at root, it is anti-Western, and in this case, anti-British.
But you're a stats man, and I would love to ask you to ask you for the numbers on how many schools do that, because I was never taught British history that way.
So there's a campaign group, sometimes they come on this show, called Don't Divide Us. They're independent, centrist, run by a remarkable woman who's been tracking this. Now, they sent freedom of information requests to schools across the UK, and they found that 1 in 4 schools who responded to their survey. So
and this was both private and state
Not a majority.
schools.
I think this was state schools.
Okay.
Said that they were teaching concepts drawn from this critical race theory. So the idea that Britain is systemically racist, or the idea that the West is institutionally discriminating against minorities. And I guess where I get concerned, and probably lots of people viewing the show and on the show, is, have we got this balance right? Because it's fine for kids in Birmingham New Street Station to say, wow, look at this diversity, isn't it incredible? But actually, what is it that's holding them together? Because celebrating diversity isn't enough. It's a very thin identity. Where I think we've gone wrong in the West is we don't really teach kids now about the thicker forms of unity that we have, about our shared values, our culture, which is why I think you see kids from minority communities and white British communities kind of rebelling against the system because they don't feel attached to the system anymore. They don't feel a sense of belonging to the system anymore. So how can we get back to that, teaching them what we got right in our history, as well as some of the things we got wrong?
I think again, I would say that is all contingent on the area the school is and the community, because the school I went to, the schools my friends, my family all went to, we never had history taught that way at all. The mention of slavery and all that never came into it. Other countries never came into it. It was literally towing the line of Great Britain constantly.
Right.
So I think it's the schools that you probably do exhibit what you've said, have a more ethnically diverse tapestry, because in my school I was the only black kid there. So what you're going to see is that on the law of averages, depending on where you are, history is tailored to meet the appetite of who is populating your school. So then, again, isn't that a good thing to have? Because you want a history that's reflective of the people studying it, so they feel recognized and feel that you have an attachment to the history in some way and a stake in it.
I guess I would argue that what we need is a national curriculum that teaches kids consistently not just the things that are wrong with their society, but also what are some of the things that we've got right in our history, and what are some of the things that we should be proud of? Because I think, Michelle, we're quite bad at talking about Britishness, because what tends to happen at every sporting event and tournament is, the commentators rush out and they say, oh, the great thing about Britishness and Englishness is diversity and multiculturalism. And there's lots of people at home scratching their heads saying, well, yes, OK, fine, we celebrate that. But there is also something incredibly unique and special, as I said before, about coming from these islands. The home of individual liberty, Magna Carta, staring down Nazism and taking on communism, and Shakespeare and the arts and culture and our language. And we want to celebrate these distinctive, unique things that make us who we are. We don't just want to say, well, we're like any other society that welcomes diversity and multiculturalism, because that's not enough. It's not really enough to hold a nation together.
I actually completely agree with you on that I've always said, and I've never changed my tune on this, is teach history, just teach it in full, and don't do a disservice to the capacity of young minds to absorb everything and make an educated decision of where they stand on it.
One of the things that I've always found very peculiar, I'm quite lucky, I've travelled quite a lot, and I find that when you do visit a lot of different countries, they seem to really proudly fly their nation's flag all over the place in some countries. We very, very rarely do that. And on very special occasions, I don't know, maybe like the coronation or whatever, we perhaps wheel it out then. But why do we only do that? Why don't we fly our flags much more proudly in this country? Why don't we sing our national anthem more frequently and proudly in this country? What are your thoughts on things like that? Get in touch and let me know. After the break, we touched on this a bit yesterday about the AfD and the rise there in Germany. Well, there's suggestions now that this so-called wave of populism could have kind of impacts for Keir Starmer here and politics in this country. What do you think to that? Also, I want to ask you as well, have you seen the news today that a group of children have been arrested, primarily girls, for now the murder of an 80-year-old? Do you feel like children are becoming more violent? If so, why do you think that is? I'll see you in 2.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana are queer. Weekends from 3 p.m.
So Prince Harry, apparently, Operation Bring Harry In from the Cold. Do you feel there's any truth to this?
Lots of tongues are wagging, Nana. We heard that he was at the memorial for Lord Robert Fellows, and obviously William was there as well. And so there was lots of, everyone going into overdrive. That was in Stattisham, Norfolk the other day. He wasn't going to attend, said the People, a mouthpiece of his. And I would have actually thought that maybe a lookalike had turned up. But now we have been led to believe that Harry's been talking to people from friends from his old life. And it's not that he wants to make a permanent move to the UK, so I believe. What I've heard, it's more about his reputation.
Well, he wants to have his cake and eat it, by the sounds of it. Obviously, no good cake it remains uneaten.
We know that the royal family is his currency. Even his late mother, obviously he's almost usurped her memory, and he needs this. He needs this to make money. Of course, he raced in to Lord Robert Fellows' memorial service. So there's lots of ambiguous behaviour, and he is going to be, in New York. We call it the silly season, don't we? And we're also looking that there's lots of different stories that are coming out. But he needs to sell stuff. He's going to be in New York.
Yeah.
And it's we've got to remember the enormous amount of hurt and offence.
Exactly.
Prince William absolutely reeling. Poor Princess Catherine. Spare book coming out at the most awful time. And you've got the Netflix
series.
It's absolutely, this is a rehabilitation strategy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7. Matt Goodwin and Judita De Silva remain alongside me. Lots of interesting conversation coming in from you guys about that former topic, about how proud you are to be British. I'll bring you into the conversation, worry not. But I also want to expand it a little bit, because if you watched the show yesterday, you'll be familiar by now with what's happened in Germany there, the rise of the AfD. It came first place in one state, it's very, very close second in another. And there's been so much commentary and kind of drilling down into this and the potential ramifications. There's lots of suggestions that this so-called wave of what people call populism that's sweeping Europe, because it's not just in Germany, many people suggesting that actually this is going to have an impact on UK politics for a few reasons. Perhaps the direction of travel that the Tory party need to go into, whether or not it's going to alter the rhetoric from Keir Starmer and some of the policy decisions that he goes on to make. What do you think?
Well, I think it is, because national populism as a movement is attracting people who are utterly fed up with what we might call...
Can you explain? I mean, you are a professor of this stuff, so if anyone's sitting at home going, what is national populism, Michelle? Can you just tell them?
So I actually wrote a book called National Populism.
Oh, did you? Oh,
you can get it from all good bookstores.
It's
on Amazon.
Give me the quick version.
So we define national populism as a movement that prioritises the interests and the values of the majority group against an elite that it argues is corrupting the country, is neglectful, is not responding to the people. And the interesting thing about what's happening in Germany, the AfD, the alternative for Germany, like what happened in France with Marine Le Pen, the Netherlands with Geert Wilders, the US with Donald Trump, the UK arguably with the Reform Party, although there are differences between these movements, is that what we're seeing are rising numbers of people, including, by the way, lots of young people. The AfD in Germany was the most popular party among young people, saying we've had enough of uncontrolled immigration. We've had enough of broken borders. We've had enough of Islamist terrorism. Remember, these elections came in the aftermath of those horrific mass stabbings in Germany. And what's also really profound, I think, Michelle, is already the mainstream are changing. We've got mainstream politicians in Germany saying, right, they've actually deported Afghan and Syrian criminals out of Germany. The centre-right is saying we want a blanket ban now on some illegal migrants. I think what these parties are going to end up doing, and I've been watching them for 20 years, they're going to end up pushing the entire system further to the right on this immigration question because elites have not been listening to voters on this issue.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what's interesting, what you talk about in Germany, when you're talking about them deporting, the rhetoric is very tough. So what they're saying is, yeah, we've deported these criminals back to Afghan. I mean, it's only about 28 of them, and they've had to make these payments of about €1,000 to these people as well. So the rhetoric's there, and they're trying to kind of appeal to people. But if anyone's got a couple of brain cells, once you start kind of scratching beneath the surface of that, it doesn't really all stack up to some people. But anyway, Juditha, what do you think?
That's the point I was actually just going to start with, where what you've got is a sentiment that exists that is justified amongst a large portion of the people. And what you need is somebody who's kind of going to be a lightning rod that's going to speak to how they feel. But how is that going to translate into actually effective governance or power? That's a different discussion. So what you have with these parties like the Brothers of Italy or the National Rally and so on, some parties which have roots in fascism, you will always find with politics that the leaders, to be effective or to gain power, you have to fluctuate. You play to one side to galvanize the party, you play to another side to galvanize the people. Any effective leader, whether you are left or right, at some point, it's almost like what Biden said when he won the election against Trump. He said, even though I represent one party, I'm going to be a president of all people. To do that, you must gravitate towards the centre because it shows you're effectively being pragmatic enough to recognise the sentiments of all people. You do not play to just one party because the country isn't populated by people who only support one party. So saying that, oh, you want someone who's going to be a leader that only represents you, that's not how leadership works. Leadership is universal. So to be practical and to function properly, you have to have a universality in your approach.
And what do you think about this notion then, where you've just been explaining about the wants, needs, desires or whatever of the majority group, and sometimes that is chipped away, chipped away, chipped away. And it seems to be that every single minority group in the entire land, the needs and wants and desires of that group is prioritised over the main majority. What would you say to that? Do you think there's any truth in that sentiment?
I don't think that it's being prioritised. What's happening is the sentiment you have, it has to be pointed enough to be practically resolved. Because what you'll have is, most like the average person, I'll say how I feel about something, but how can I make change happen where I'm not working to a point that alienates everyone else to my pleasure? Like they say, your convenience stops where the next person's inconvenience begins. I do agree that the right has a problem, because what you have is you're creating this further within the extreme right sentiment, and the centrists are not doing what is necessary to say we're listening and we're adapting to accommodate. But as far as the left goes, what you've seen even in Germany or with Marine Le Pen, when it gets to a point where they feel you are a threat, they say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The rest will rally around to mount a defense against you. It may not be effective long term, but what they're showing is that when you act a certain way that is so alienating of so many other people, all those others will work together to fight against you.
Can I just come in briefly? Because I think sometimes when we talk about these policy issues, we're led to believe they're minority positions. But, you know, if you look at the UK as an example, you know, we had polling by YouGov this week that shows 67% of Brits want to increase the deportation of illegal migrants out of the country. We've got 2/3 of the country saying immigration has been too high over the last decade. We've got record low numbers of people feeling as though immigration overall has been good for Britain's economy, public services, and the NHS and so on. And I think what we're seeing here is basically an elite class that has radicalised over the last 15 years, has basically defined itself through its liberal values, its liberal views. It likes to say nice things about immigration. It likes to be openly liberal because it wins more status points among other members of the elites because they don't really have to live with the consequences of these decisions. I mean, if you are, belonging to, the political class, chances are your life's pretty good and you're not really going to suffer the consequences of some of these disastrous policy decisions. But most of these parties are tapping into views that are held by large majorities of people in Europe. And the elite find this really threatening. They find it uncomfortable, which is why they instinctively then rush to censorship as an answer. So you see Keir Starmer saying, well, let's narrow this marketplace of ideas. Let's shut down this public square. Let's have, non-hateful...
non-crime hate
Non-crime hate incidents. Let's have legal but harmful speech. Let's control the conversation. And many people are saying, well, actually, what we want are just, we want lower levels of immigration, we want strong borders, and we want foreign nationals removed from the country. Like, we've had a discussion about prisons over the last 3 weeks. Here's one thing we haven't discussed. We've got 10,000 foreign nationals in our prisons. Why don't we remove those folks from the prison so we can have some more space for actual criminals and keep actual criminals in prison?
I just find it so peculiar that so many governments, it seems like globally, this is a global issue, point blank refuse to acknowledge people's concerns on this core topic for so many people. And anyone that watches my show regularly, you'll hear me repeat this saying all the time. But I believe that censorship is the midwife of extremism. So when you censor people's, what I would argue, legitimate concerns, you don't make those concerns disappear. People don't wake up one day and say, oh, Keir Starmer's told me I can't think that, so I better not think it. Those concerns don't go away. What happens is you bury them and bury them and bury them. People go, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. Some voice pops up over here that then starts reflecting your thoughts, albeit perhaps a bit more extreme than you started off. And then you start gravitating. So you do find yourself pulled to more extreme positions, which it should never have been the case, because legitimate concerns, particularly around safety, Judita, we talk about this often. If you live in, say, I don't know, Hartlepool, where you've just seen that this random dog walker was killed by someone who shouldn't have even been in the country in the first place, you're going to therefore potentially be concerned about, well, are we safe here? What safety checks have been done on people, so on and so forth. But you're not even allowed to say that anymore, potentially.
No, I completely agree that there are certain things that I don't even understand how to wrap my head around the way political leaders are approaching it, because it seems so counterproductive. There are justified concerns around safety. There are justified concerns around immigration. But what you have is that certain voices representing that point of view use a mode of articulation that is antagonistic and too combative. Just how you articulated yourself just then makes complete sense. It's clear. It's pointed. These are where the problems lie. This is what you should address. Most people who are riling up sentiment don't speak the way you do. And so a perception is projected. It's kind of like what they say about minority groups. The people who shout the loudest tend to be the most extreme and give a perception that that's how everyone else feels when they don't. If you speak to a lot of ethnic minorities, they think the same way and say, I feel unsafe here. That's true. I am worried about this. Immigration troubles me there because I've said there are different kinds of immigration. Students who come here, skilled workers who come here, come for a purpose, do a job, earn a wage, pay a tax. Many of them intend to retire and go back home, look after their elderly families. There is a trajectory for their existence here. It's not all immigration, but what you'll have is people putting out a clarion call that immigration is wrong, and then the rest of people hear that and go, wait, that doesn't apply to me. You've created enemies instantly. Be pointed in your rhetoric around where your discontent lies, and you'll have a more productive move towards change.
What do you think to that? Do you agree with that? Is that a fair sentiment? Tell me your thoughts. Lots of you in that first section I was asking you, are you proud to be British? One of the things that I'm finding quite interesting, so many people are coming in and saying, I'm not proud to be British, I'm proud to be English or Scottish or Welsh or whatever it is that you're saying, which part of the land you're from. I find that quite interesting. There's a lot of pride among you guys to your nation, but not the collective as a whole. I wonder why that is. Michael says, Michelle, I am very proud of being British every single day. Leslie says, I always used to be proud to be British, but not so anymore. Jill says she feels that we're constantly just drip-fed a narrative that we should be ashamed. And she says she feels it's led by people in the academia and the arts. She feels that that sentiment is coming very much from those sectors. Christina, though, says, I am very, very immensely proud of my country. Mary says, yes, Michelle, please, can you point out to everyone, we have a beautiful country that has so much to be proud of and so many achievements that absolutely should be lauded, she says. Coming up, I want to talk to you about a couple of different things. Council tax, do you think that is going to be under the line of fire when it comes to Labour's tinkering plans? And children, what's going on? A group of kids arrested for murder. I mean, are kids getting more violent? If so, what do we do about this? See you in 2.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through tonight, there will be a few showers, but for many of us, clear skies, and it will turn quite chilly across northern areas. But through the rest of this evening, a weather front still to push south and eastwards through parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, into areas of northern England and Wales. So cloudier skies will start to develop here through this evening. A risk of some showers across northwestern England, Wales and the southwest. The showers, though, moving away from the south and east. So it will turn drier for many of us overnight tonight, but still a few showers lingering on across parts of western Scotland in particular. But clearer skies inland will allow temperatures to fall away to 2 or 3 degrees in rural Scotland. A fresher night than last night as well across southern areas of England too. But despite the chilly start, it will be a bright start for northern and western areas of Scotland, particularly across the Highlands and the Islands. In the west, in the east, though, a risk of showers as well as in the southwest. Some of these showers could turn quite heavy, particularly across Northern Ireland throughout the middle part of Wednesday. There's a risk of a few showers across central areas of England too, but still some sunny spells around, and Wednesday will be a day of sunshine and showers generally across the UK. In any sunshine, it won't feel too bad. The winds are fairly light. After the chillier start, temperatures aren't going to quite reach as high as they have done in the past few days, but it will feel pleasant enough with those lighter winds. Showers, though, could turn quite heavy with a risk of hail and thunder across parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But it's across the south and east where we see the heaviest rain develop through Wednesday evening. That will likely linger into Thursday morning. So there is a rain warning in force through rush hour on Thursday across many southern areas of England and parts of South Wales as well. So take a look at our website for more information on that. But looking ahead to the weekend, it looks like it will turn much drier and warmer across northern areas, with rain lingering across more southern areas. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. On the M6 in Staffordshire, the northbound exit remains closed at junction 12 at the A5 after a lorry shed its load. The 2 inside lanes on that 4-lane stretch still coned off for recovery work. And the A46 Leicester Western bypass is blocked southbound by a collision at the A6, the Loughborough Road junction. In Berkshire, the A329, the Oxford Road at Reading has been closed after a car caught fire off Connaught Road. On the M3 in Hampshire, a lane's closed on the southbound exit onto the eastbound M27, that's north of Southampton, where a car has broken down, and Transport for Wales trains remain suspended southbound Shrewsbury to Hereford in the west of England after a train broke down. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry till 7, Matt Goodwin, Judita De Silva alongside me. Alice says, interesting first conversation, Michelle. Please point out the UK voted left when the rest of Europe seems to be voting right. Is that fair, Matt?
Well, I think in terms of the national breakdown, I don't think, Labour might have won a majority, but they only got about 20-25% of the overall share of adults in the country.
It's very very soon, before the end of the programme, I want to talk to you about council tax and potential Labour plans there. But before I get to that, a story caught my eye. You might have seen this. An 80-year-old man, he has been murdered. It turns out that a group of children, predominantly girls, I don't know why that kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit more, but it was predominantly girls have been arrested for this man's murder. Now, it's an active case, so I don't want to get too much into the specifics of this. But so many headlines these days, Judita, seem to centre around criminal, violent acts of very, very young children. Do you think children are getting more violent? Are we just getting exposed to it more? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, there's a desensitization that has come with social media, because social media, the internet is like the Wild West. It's unbridled, it's free, and anything goes. And because of that unpolicing that exists, it's almost like when the cat's away, the mice will play, where your parents are not watching, when the grown-ups are not watching, you can do whatever you want to do. And the more you do that and get away with it, you keep pushing the boundaries. That's human nature. So when you look at where social media is today, you have situations where people stream themselves committing crimes and they get thousands of people watching and clicking and liking and following them. And
well, why are the police watching that then?
You just can't police that amount of constant information going, because it's multiple people streaming at multiple times in different places. You can't... I mean,
yeah,
you have to get
if someone wrote a tweet and said something like, I don't want migrants at the end of my road, you can bet your bottom dollar they'd be able to find that among the sea of social media posts. So why not this?
There's probably hundreds of thousands of other people tweeting the same thing that aren't being caught in the net. But that's the whole point of it. They feel like anything goes. And when you actually think of the literal Wild West and how savage it was, that's the reflection of what's going on now in social media. And young people are finding that I can live according to my own rules without consequence. I can do things with impunity, and that is a drug. And if I do it and it gets me attention, attention is the most valuable commodity today. And people who hone it, who harness it and control it, feel like they have power.
But there are other trends, though. There are other. I mean, you know, I agree with much of what you're saying. I mean, John Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, you know, he's arguing that we've got two things colliding. You've got this explosion of social media, which is giving kids access to stuff outside of the household and the family. But you've also got this mental health epidemic, particularly among young women. And listening to you describe the story, Michelle, made me think of some of the cases in places like Toronto, where you've had so-called swarming, where gangs of kids will swarm around, you know, a homeless person or whatever, and basically attack them and assault them on the streets. It's a sort of Lord of the Flies.
Like
and I think, you know, again, we've got an abdication of adult responsibility. Where are the parents? You know, do you agree with people like John Haidt, Miriam Cates and others who are saying actually we should be banning all smartphones among children until the age of 16, 17. I'm probably in favour of that, looking at the evidence on it. But what is clear, Michelle, is the social contract as we've set it up isn't working, right? It's not working for kids, and it's not working for parents, and it's not working for these people who are being assaulted.
See, the flaw in the plan is anyone can have a child these days.
But I do think, like, parents' rights are being relegated more and more to the side, where you're getting to a point where even some parents, some, not all, are saying they're kind of leaving their kids to raise themselves, thinking that giving my child autonomy is good parenting, where I just don't think it is.
I think that's lazy, because anyone can be a parent, but I think to be a good parent, it really takes time. You have to, it doesn't matter how much money you've got or whatever, it's your time, you've got to invest your time. We talk about social media and all the rest of it. Parents, I think parents and grandparents, whoever's got the children, you've got to look at the phones, you've got to look at the kids' telephones and see what it is they're doing. Another story caught my eye as well. A 12-year-old boy, he was up in court, involved in the rioting. Get this, everybody, where was his mum? So this kid is 12. His mum is on holiday in Ibiza. She's flown out to Ibiza the day before, apparently. Her 12-year-old is in court for rioting. I just think, come on, I mean, if you're going to have these kids, which is, of course, everyone's free choice, you do actually have to put a bit of graft into this. It's not always easy. It takes time and effort. But, I mean, come on, guys, we do actually have to parent our own children, don't we? Look, after the break, I want to talk to you about council tax, because there's so much in the line of vision now for Labour when it comes to cuts. What about these single-parent discounts then? Sorry, single-person discounts on council tax. Is this the next thing to be adjusted? Your thoughts. See you in 2.
is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But it's certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes.
You know the best time to go to a dentist? When? 2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went into Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. This is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants, things like that.
Well,
so,
yeah. I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down, but in many cases they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment? I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected." She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, doesn't it, Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss. GB News, the People's Channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry, Matt Goodwin and Judita De Silva. Tall 7 Judita was just telling me in the break a story about some singer, can't remember the name now, and she is all over social media, and her perspective on the world is if it doesn't happen on social media, it's not happening, full stop. I mean, how sad. I bet it is actually quite challenging to be a very young person growing up in all of this. The very best way to sort it all out, if you ask me, is just take the phones off them, stop them using social media. I think you'd solve some of the problems overnight. Anyway, look, councils, they are now lobbying Rachel Reeves, apparently, to scrap a council tax exemption for people living on their own. Angela Rayner, she has refused to commit to keeping the discount. Matt Goodwin, your thoughts?
So... Here's a prediction. I think this is going to come to be known as the widow tax.
Oh.
And the reason that I say that is it's going to, I think, hit widows really hard. If you're living alone and you're not going to get the single-person discount, the council tax discount. I used to get that when I was living alone as a young professional in Manchester, and if you pay less council tax than you do if you're in a couple. I mean, it's going to hit people hard. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? You know, Labour, the foot is off the brake when it comes to immigration, so we've got more demand for housing, house prices going up, rents going up. We have got no long-term vision around that in the country, and now we've got another tax being put on people simply because they happen to live alone, and that inevitably will hit, I think, widows and single pensioners very hard indeed, coming on top of the winter fuel tax as well.
Literally, as you started talking, no word of a lie, it was happening real time. You were talking, a lady called Sue was getting in touch saying, Michelle, it might be worth thinking that so many single people are also pensioners, as she says she is. She says she is a widow and this would hurt her, and she calls it another sneaky attack on pensioners. Sue, you and Matt, your brains are so aligned, it's magic.
It's Sue who gave me the idea, actually.
Oh, is Sue your mum that planted the seed, told you to say it on telly?
Sue mentioned it to me on Twitter.
Was it?
No.
Oh, Jadita, what do you think to it all?
Yeah, I think I can't actually disagree, because it's a case of, you know, that phenomenon that people talk about, squeezing the middle. You refuse to tax the very wealthy. You cannot tax the very poor, so all the strain goes on the middle. In this case, even though you've said that it's going to be painful decisions that have to be made with this budget, that it's necessary. That's understandable. When you want change, you've got to find the money. The money's got to come from somewhere. But when you put people who should be your priority for protection in danger because you happen to have a blind spot with this policy, you have to rethink it. But what you said, I actually didn't even think about when you said the widowmaker. It's like, for instance, women who you have a home that you had with your spouse. He's passed away, so now your property lies within a bracket. You're now going to functionally have to pay even more money, even though you're sustaining that cost singularly. That's unfair. That's something they shouldn't have to go through.
I don't want to make it personal, but there's someone in my family who was already rocked by the winter fuel increase under Labour, because it's not what you expect. If you're a struggling pensioner, it's not what you expect from a Labour government. And now that same person will potentially be hit by losing the financial benefit that comes with the council tax reduction. So when you put it all on top, it's actually having quite a substantial impact upon that person's monthly income. And I think, that's where Labour are going to, if they're not careful, people are going to be looking at Angela Rayner getting drunk at nightclubs in Ibiza that cost, €200 to get into and €30 a drink, and comparing and contrasting with the experience of these pensioners struggling to get by.
Away from the point of, the politics of optics, Labour is in a dangerous position because the tenets that hold the image of what the Labour Party represents, you're chipping away at that.
Absolutely.
Because these are people who have held the Labour Party in a kind of esteem that was established by historical positions you have held. You are breaking those down now. If you lose a base that doesn't believe in you, you will end up like the Conservatives.
Gary, one of my viewers, he's come up with an idea. He says rather than taking the single-person discount away, they should be looking at increasing the tax for households that have multiple adults living there. Oh, Gary, you'll divide opinions at home on that one. One of my viewers has got in touch talking about that first topic about pride in Britain and Britishness and all the rest of it. He says, how come nobody, Michelle, ever focuses on the kind of ebbing away at Christianity in this country? That conversation, he says, never, ever seems to happen. I think that's quite interesting. Many of you not happy with the pensioners, the impacts that the pensioners will be feeling from some of these cuts. There's a picture going around on social media. It's a dinghy full of pensioners, and it's a bit of a joke saying that at this rate you're going to have dinghies full of pensioners trying to arrive on the shores of Britain to be put up in hotels this winter to try and stay warm. I mean, I do realise it's pretty much borderline illegal to laugh at things these days, but it did make me smile. But then it also made me sad because I really do worry for a lot of pensioners as the cold weather does draw in. Keep your thoughts coming in on all of that. But for now, that's all I've got time for. Thanks to my panel. Thanks to you at home. Nigel Farage is up next. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through tonight, there will be a few showers, but for many of us, clear skies, and it will turn quite chilly across northern areas. But through the rest of this evening, a weather front still to push south and eastwards through parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, into areas of northern England and Wales. So cloudier skies will start to develop here through this evening. A risk of some showers across northwestern England, Wales and the southwest. The showers, though, moving away from the south and east. So it will turn drier for many of us overnight tonight, but still a few showers lingering on across parts of western Scotland in particular. But clearer skies inland will allow temperatures to fall away to 2 or 3 degrees in rural Scotland. A fresher night than last night as well across southern areas of England too. But despite the chilly start, it will be a bright start for northern and western areas of Scotland, particularly across the Highlands and the Islands. In the east, though, a risk of showers as well as in the southwest. Some of these showers could turn quite heavy, particularly across Northern Ireland throughout the middle part of Wednesday. There's a risk of a few showers across central areas of England too, but still some sunny spells around, and Wednesday will be a day of sunshine and showers generally across the UK. In any sunshine, it won't feel too bad. The winds are fairly light. After the chillier start, temperatures aren't going to quite reach as high as they have done in the past few days, but it will feel pleasant enough with those lighter winds. Showers, though, could turn quite heavy with a risk of hail and thunder across parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But it's across the south and east where we see the heaviest rain develop through Wednesday evening. That will likely linger into Thursday morning. So there is a rain warning in force through rush hour on Thursday across many southern areas of England and parts of South Wales as well. So take a look at our website for more information on that. But looking ahead to the weekend, it looks like it will turn much drier and warmer across northern areas, with rain lingering across more southern areas. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. In the outskirts of Glasgow to the southeast of the city centre at Down the Knock, the Shorefield Drive, the A728, blocked by a collision. On the M1,